Welcome to the Stellar Woman Show, the podcast, magazine, and video hosted by Stella Olivia Kikoyo. Each week, Stella will be bringing you a guest or a segment from the Stellar Woman magazine, whose mission is to spread thriving global women's stories, expert knowledge, and experiences covering mind, body, and spirit, fashion and beauty, money, business, and leadership, so that you too can be inspired, learn, be empowered, and thrive. Since knowledge is potential power, our aim is to spread it like light from one woman to another, which we believe will help to bring about change in perspectives and create new possibilities for all women to learn, be empowered, and thrive. We know if one woman thrives, her family and community thrive too, and the world becomes a better and brighter world. With over 100 interviews and stories, articles, videos, surveys, real life and business lessons and trainings, we believe that there's no better women's classroom as the Stellar Woman Show and magazine. Stella and her guests will be exploring how they started, the dreams realized and unrealized, aspirations, the steps taken, the challenges, failures, lessons learned, decision-making process, and what made them successful, and the stellar woman that they are. For more information, check out the website, www.stellarwomanmag.com. Now, here's your host, Stella Olivia Kikoyo.
Welcome and thank you for choosing to be here with us on the Stellar Woman Show. This is part 2 of our courageous decision-making conversation with John Dennis. If you missed part 1, look out for part 1 in the previous episodes. Otherwise, stay put and let's kick it off. So as a person in the top leadership positions, you must be faced with key business decisions to make. Are you able to share one of the most courageous decisions that challenged the status quo that you have had to make in the corporate sector? And how did you come to make this decision?
Oh gosh, I can't think of one off the top of my head really. I'll tell you something that it was courageous and challenging, but I wouldn't say it was a key business decision. And that was, I said before, I was doing hourly paid lecturing for a number of colleges. And one college decided that they wanted to formally interview, formally interview all the people they had on the list of hourly paid lecturers. But I just had my first baby and I didn't have any childcare. She was probably 6 weeks old. So I said, I'll come to the interview, but the baby comes too. And yeah, I can't believe I did that really. But I mean, it was only an hourly paid job. So if I hadn't got it, it wouldn't have probably mattered. But fortunately, she was one that always fell asleep in the car. So I came in with her in the car seat. I bunged it down because theoretically, I could have still been on maternity leave. I put the car seat down and said, you've got as long to interview me as she stays asleep. And I got the job. And I look back and go, did I really do that? We're talking 27 years ago. Did I really have the guts to do that? Or if somebody needed me in for a meeting, this one happened to be only 2 or 3 weeks old at the time, and I had to have a meeting. Baby came too. And if she needed feeding, she needed feeding. And I was discreet, but they wanted me in. That was the deal. And nobody ever said no. So sometimes I think we create our own barriers by assuming. So that was many, many years ago. And I still cannot believe I was that courageous.
You are courageous.
But I try to encourage other women with young children to be courageous too in that way, and to not assume the status quo.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Thank you very much for that. So did she sleep throughout the interview?
She did. And it really was ticking the boxes type interview rather than a proper formal interview. They realized I hadn't done the HR stuff right the first time. They wanted to do it again. So, maybe it wasn't that courageous, but they literally needed to see, the senior managers had never seen the hourly paid lecturers that were teaching their students. So they had to go through that process. So, I mean, I did make a judgment call on that.
That's a good one. Because I think we create definitely a had to reflect during your answering that I've had moments where most likely I've created a barrier myself. I've thought, I can't do this because I have a child. I can't do this because, but have taking the courage and just taking the child with you, could help.
And of course, there's health and safety and all the rest. We do need to take that into consideration, and I think we need to let people know in advance what's happening. But if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's true. That's very true. Thank you for that. Thank you. So in your personal life, what is the most courageous decision that you've had to make? Is that connected to your personal life, actually?
I guess that probably was. I mean, one in my personal life very much was, I said, we live Edge City Centre. This educational system isn't great, but I do believe in the National Health Service. I do believe in, if I say public education, that's the wrong word, because public education means something different in the UK, doesn't it? And so when our kids went to secondary school, we had to trust that they would be okay in their local secondary school. That was a big decision to make, because it would have been so easy to say, no, we're going to take you off and put you into private school. And for some people, that would have been absolutely fine. But from our ethical stance, we didn't want to do that. And so we made sure that we had some backup if we needed it in particular subjects. Both my girls, one of the girls actually went to a selective school, and the other one did in sixth form, and was the first kid from her secondary school to actually get into this selective school for sixth form. So, but there's a big trust there about, are we doing the right thing? Because all our friends had moved away from the centre of Bradford to the nice leafy suburbs to get their kids into other parts. And we just felt that if you do that, you just have a flight of the middle class people out of an area, and then you're just damning that place. So that was a societal thing. And the other thing was changing careers so I could start a family. Running my own business the first time was so that I could start a family. And that was probably a courageous decision to make. So I had no maternity leave or anything like that, because I was self-employed. Fortunately, they were both born in the summer, so I could then start teaching again in September. But, you don't know. So there are courageous moments, taking that first job, working away from home as well. I had the conversation with the family. They were all in agreement, but you don't know what impact it's going to make. And it's not necessarily recommended for everybody.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. So as a chair of the CIM board and the CEO of your business, what are some of the challenges you face when making important corporate decisions?
Okay, it's a non-executive board. So we only meet up really for those meetings, which are 4 to 6 times a year. And I think with any important decision making, it's making sure, ensuring we have the appropriate information to hand to make judgments, that everybody has a chance to express their views. So that's something in the last year as chair I've tried to make sure happens. I've learnt that quite often it's useful to get people's views come to me before the meeting, and then we share them at the meeting, so we can start to see what the pattern is, because quite often it's he who speaks first, and it usually is a he, but it could be a he or she who speaks first, tends to guide where the decision's going to go. And it's usually the person who's got, is more outspoken, and we need the reflectors. We need the people who've got the deep thinking to be able to have their voice and to be able to get that earlier rather than later. So I've actually found, I don't do it for everything, but asking people to respond in writing to me before a meeting helps me then know who to ask first for their viewpoints, or I might even share all of those views so we see them all at the same time. But certainly it's about making sure we've got the right information, everybody can express their views, and that we bring people along to the journey, because if you're making a big decision, you need to know the background. You need to know how it's come, or how this recommendation's come to us. And sometimes it comes out of the blue and you go, where did that come from? Didn't know that was a problem. And so what we'll be doing with the CIM in particular is start creating the journey. So if somebody knows they're going to bring a paper to the next board, we introduce it at the board before, so people can start to think about it and before we then make a decision, if time allows. But it is about, and it's only something I've really, really picked up in the last few years, is getting everybody's voice and making it equal to the person who speaks the loudest.
I think it's great. It's really great how you ensure that you tap into everyone's. You've talked about the reflective people, the deep reflectors, the ones who will take time to respond. And the fact that that
the ones who speaks fast is actually going to guide the meeting. And yeah, that's definitely something that if you're in a top decision in a board, you have to be really aware of.
Yeah. And I've become more aware of it, having been a chair of a board.
That is great. Thank you very much for sharing that. So bias is one of the elements that can affect the quality of decision being made. How do you minimize the effect of bias in decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that I've got to, I'm in a business book club that I've been in for the last 2 years. And this book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Carman, I don't know if you've read it, you can't see it really there. But there's a subsequent book as well that I read recently that I just can't find at the moment. And it made me question how I think, because sometimes you think, oh, I've got, somebody will come into my office, ask me a question, I give them an answer, it's just like that. And I think I've given them a brilliant answer. And this book questioned, well, how did you get to that quick answer? And sometimes it is experience, and other times, how do I know that I'm not biased myself? I went through this sort of like, whoa, how do I know I'm making the right decisions? But really, it's all about getting that objective information as much as anything else and making sure that you can critically evaluate it. So, if you get a flaky paper or it seems like a very subjective paper, you've got to look at what isn't in that paper that should have been in that paper and try and get that information, and certainly getting more people involved. I have to tell my staff whenever I start a new job is that I think aloud. So I will make a suggestion, and I've learned by my mistake that then people go, oh, the boss has said this, we better go and do it. And actually, no, it's a suggestion. Now let's hone it together and see if it will work, because I need other people's input. So getting people more involved. But I know at some point a decision has to be made, even with conflicting viewpoints. And that decision is the manager or the chair, whoever it may be, that has to make that final decision based on the information available.
Yeah, at some point, definitely you have to make that decision. And you talked about timely decision making as well. So
yeah.
Yeah. So what would you regard yourself as, an intuitive thinker or a reflective thinker?
Annoyingly, I'm both. So yeah, I will do that intuitive. As I said, somebody comes to the doorway, asks a question, intuitive response. But my whole doctorate was a reflection. It was an autoethnography. So obviously I could go right to the far end. Although I love numbers at one end, I can certainly deep dive into reflection and that process there. I've written book chapters on reflection. But if somebody had asked me a number of years ago, I would have said, oh, definitely I'm intuitive. I'm more of an activist. I don't sit down and reflect, but I love my own company. I like reflecting. And sometimes I will say to somebody, I need to think on that because my first answer is not going to be the best. Just knowing that and remembering that on occasions.
Beautiful. Thank you. So how do you foster a culture of decisiveness? Of course, you've talked about timely decision in your life and in the workplace. How do you foster this culture?
I know if I don't make a decision there and then, usually, I have to diarise it, otherwise it'll never get done. And that's from everything from booking a concert to go to see a concert. If we say, oh yeah, we'll go to that. If I don't make a decision, it won't get done. And then 6 months later, we'll go, oh, I wish we'd booked that. Right through to obviously something to do with a strategic decision for the business. So if we're in a meeting and we're not able to make a decision, or I can't make a decision by myself on something, I try and diarise it to make sure we come back to it. Because if I don't diarise it, it just disappears.
Love that. I love that. I love that. I haven't been doing that. It just stays somewhere in the cloud, but diarising it is good.
Oh, and also I now use my phone as an audio recorder and everything, because if I have a thought, I put it on my phone somehow, whether that's audio, whether I type something in, it just disappears. And sometimes those little things that come through your mind when you're not expecting it, often the solution to difficult problems that you've been trying to solve.
Very good. Very good. I hope you are all listening and you can tap into that. I love it. So how do you have a process you follow in making important work decisions?
I think I've learned, and it's not so much work decisions, but when I've had to make judgments. So for example, if you've got a student complaint or staff member complaint or not so much I've never had a grievance, but that type of thing, is you have to get to know what the real problem is. because often the first issue is just surface level, and there's actually something much deeper. So you have to do your research and get to know in terms of making decisions. So I try and gather all the information I can, get people's opinions. I try to foresee what might happen with different approaches, but you can never totally get that right. Then you have to bite the bullet and make a judgment and a decision. As I said before, few decisions are absolute. You can sometimes come back to some, you can sometimes adapt them if suddenly more information comes to light or something out of the blue happens that you hadn't expected. It's just making the best possible decision with the information that you can get at the time. And we won't get all the information with the time span that we've got.
Okay. You have to make a decision based on the information. So what key message would you like to give decision makers in businesses today to help them in their decision-making process?
Yeah, I think it's about your team. You need to get a good team around you who will have different viewpoints and are prepared to question yours. And you need to accept that. Otherwise, you're just going to get yes people or people that keep quiet because they don't think they're being valued. So you have to let them know that you respect their views as well. And that whilst you may not necessarily ultimately go with their views, you do respect it and you want to hear it. I think that's important. And I've talked before about listening to everybody and not just the loudest voice. We have to give time for those who need time to reflect or to gather their thoughts, because often they'll just say one or two sentences and you go, wow, why didn't we think of that? But they need to have time, and sometimes you need to actually ask them for their view. And it's, I've said it before, don't be scared of making a not quite perfect decision. It's making the decision that's the most important thing.
Making a decision, yes.
Yeah.
Like that, getting a team that can also question you, a good team. Yes. Oh, wow. That's very important. Decision maker. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Do you ever regret decisions that you have made?
I've regretted more the decisions I haven't made. And I think where I've been slowest is when it's involved people. So some poor appointments occasionally been made, or we've inherited people who have not been up to the job. And I like to see the best in people. I like to give people a chance to prove themselves. But I suspect I've been a little bit slow sometimes in making the difficult decisions about people. I've never regretted a decision I've made about a person once I've made it, but I have probably caused issues because I haven't made that decision quickly enough, if that makes sense. Yes, and I would say it's always about people. I know I'm not always the most eloquent to people. There's times when I shouldn't necessarily be beating around the bush a bit, or sometimes maybe I've been a bit more direct than I should have been.
Yes,
I don't particularly like upsetting people. So that's something that I am, and in many ways that's good. In other ways, it can be something that I have to work with. So it's a skill that I will always have to develop. Passing on bad news. Even if it's that you didn't get that job interview. It's you don't really want to tell somebody that, and I think most people don't, and most of us aren't perfect in doing it. But it's something that I certainly have to work on. I think. Not because I'm nasty or horrible, it's because I care too much about how people are going to take it.
And becoming aware, I think self-awareness is what is important. Knowing that now you're in this zone and you're just caring for someone and you just don't want to affect them, but at the same time, growing to actually deliver. Yeah, I get you, because I am like that, and I could really, I would struggle to deliver such heartful message to anyone.
Yeah, I've had to make people redundant. I've obviously had to dismiss people. Wow. Sometimes it's fine, if somebody should have, there was no reason why they've behaved as they've done and you've had to dismiss, you can sort of separate yourself from that. You can be very objective. But if there were personal circumstances behind it all and people have just made the wrong judgment, then that actually is quite hard if you've got any sort of a heart in you to sort of because it's going to affect their lifestyle, their mental health and everything. So but we have to do it. That's one of the things about being a manager and a leader. You have to do it because you then get the best out of the people that remain, because they see that you are valuing them and not allowing other people to pull the wool over your eyes.
Yeah, I get you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And now I'm sure our listeners and subscribers are listening to this vibrant stellar woman. So with all these achievements, our question, and I'm sure their question would be, have you failed at anything before? Because it's all stars everywhere.
Oh,
So
hopefully people only see the successes, because quite often we can hide the things that we never managed to get done or achieve. I was very fortunate when I applied for the Leeds Beckett job. It was the first job I applied for. I applied for Wolverhampton, first job I applied for, I got. But, subsequently, there were many jobs I applied for that I didn't get. So, that's a failure. We all have that. Messing up a report that the Vice Chancellor's seen or something, and you go, oh my goodness, that was so basic. How did I miss that? Letting people down for me is the most excruciating one. And I think and it's men and women, but a lot of women do say yes to too much, and then we let people down.
Yes.
Oh, the amount of times I've underestimated how long a report would take, or know full well that I'm not going to get it in on time. The amount of times I haven't got that academic paper into the conference because I just run out of time. So there's lots of failures there. There's been times when I've taken on a role and I've just not really had the time to be able to do it. A voluntary role. And it chugged along, but it wasn't a success as it should have been. So plenty of times. And of course, we all look back and think about our families and what we failed to do there sometimes. I remember absolutely losing my voice or straining my voice because the girls weren't ready when I collected them for a dancing lesson. And they got in the car and I said, you're going to be late now. And I said that so loudly, I hurt my voice. And at that moment, I went, what's the problem? They're just late for a lesson. It doesn't matter. But I'd rush from Leeds to Bradford to pick them up, to take them to another side, and everything was so timed. So we fail all the time, and it's natural because nobody's going to succeed in everything. And you've got to push doors, and sometimes those doors open and you slip through them, and other doors you blossom. If you're not ready to fail, you're not going to be able to succeed all the time.
Definitely.
It's
Thank
how you
you.
pick yourself up, as people will say, isn't it?
Yeah. Very good. So there is that element of failure, but then there is some people feel like if I fail or if they've failed, they haven't been able to get up. So if you take us in a moment where you felt the failure, but you've managed to get yourself up. How did you manage to get yourself up? Because I think that's what many women would like to tap into.
Quite often it's a support network. I find that people help me up. So don't underestimate other people, and don't just take, we get all these, we think they're platitudes, but sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. When people say, don't worry, it doesn't matter, Joan, or you did well at that bit, but not that bit. Nobody's going to remember it in 6 months' time or whatever. And we go, yeah, but I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to accept that. And actually, you've got to somehow move on. One of my university friends is a guy called Paul McGee, and he wrote a book called Sumo, Shut Up, Move On. And he talks about wallow time, and we do need to have time sometimes to just wallow. Why didn't I get that job that I was in an acting role for? I should have got it. Yeah, wallow, and then decide what you're going to do. We have to acknowledge our feelings. That example, I applied for the dean's job at university. I was acting dean. I didn't get it. So what do? I either have to choose, and I had to continue being acting dean till that person turned up. I have to either choose to continue that wholeheartedly and then decide what I'm going to do in going back to my substantive role. Can I cope with that? Can I work with this other person, or do I move on? And you have to then make a decision, because you can't keep on just wallowing and going, blow it, I'm just throwing everything away. But it was other people that helped me as well in terms of getting my mindset back on track. And I stayed there for another 2 years. I loved working with the guy, but then I moved on to a job opportunity when it was offered me. So it was fine, because we're not defined by what we do. No. And we have to remember that.
I think it's important. That's, I think, a key nugget to take away. We are not defined by what we do, but I think we identify with all of that, and that puts us down.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a failure. Thank you very much for highlighting that. So you're a mother, an educated businesswoman, a board member, advisor, mentor, all of these things, a trainer. How do you do it all?
Probably don't, really. And also up until last year, I was doing my doctorate as well, and one of the reasons why I did step away from the Staffordshire job was so that I could spend more. I was going to be timed out on my doctorate if I didn't finish it in a year. So I had to do it. So, sometimes you don't do it all. And it was my doctorate that kept on getting extended and extended and extended. I have a cleaner. I've had a cleaner before my kids were born, so probably 30 years, still the same person. Great friend now, she's been to the weddings and everything, but I have a cleaner. We have somebody who mows the lawn. I don't always get to events I would like to attend. You look at my background, and I was going to move to another room, and then I thought, no, this says something about me, because you can't be good at everything, you can't do everything. This is my elder daughter's old bedroom. It was in Disney princess colours, pink and blue. She's 27. We haven't decorated. Downstairs looks fine. Upstairs, okay. So most people will have to have taken shortcuts somewhere,
Yes.
And it's just working out what you're prepared to take shortcuts in or not do, and what you can value. Also, a lot of these things interact. Yes, I'm an educator, but my business is about education and about marketing. I'm a board member, but it's about marketing, it's about education. I don't train and coach and mentor every day. They happen occasionally. So it's trying to find things that dovetail all in together, so you're not doing completely separate things. I still don't know, and I still am in awe of many women with young kids and how they manage it. And I still don't know how I did it looking back, because that's when I went through the promotion routes as well. And I don't know how I did it. But I will say children are the best time management tool. If you know you've got to get out of the office at 5 o'clock in the evening because you've got to pick them up at 6 in another city, you will leave at 5 o'clock in the evening. If you've got nothing, like I have nothing now that I have to stop for, I suddenly go, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, it's 8:30. I better go and make something. So, sometimes having parameters to work in, I think, are really important as well. And then listening to other people and knowing when they start to say, are you doing too much? And, reflecting on that. It does come as a cost. So for me, my cost is I don't do enough exercise. Since I've worked at home, my diet has got a lot better, because when I worked by myself, it was just, I'm back at 9:30, what do I eat? And so you have to make sure, you can't really give up. You do need to give yourself time. And women in particular, you do need to feel like just because you're working, that isn't your me time. Your me time has to be in addition to that. Because I know I felt that, well, I'm working full time, so I don't deserve to go to the gym, to go for a walk by myself, to read a book by myself, to do a hobby, because actually I've chosen to work. But that's a really bad mindset. We choose to work. We may have family or friends or other relationships, but we also have to look after ourselves. And that's the bit for me that got squashed. Definitely counsel people not to squash that. Be selfish with your own time.
That's a good one. Be selfish with your own time, women. Be selfish with your own time. That's really true. Thank you very much. Who is your ideal stellar woman?
Oh,
their attributes.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a lady who probably most of you have not heard of, and she probably wouldn't know that she's a stellar woman to me. And that's a lady I met when I was at Staffordshire University, a lady called Carol Shanahan, who is owner of Synetic Solutions, which is a big sort of IT data type company. But she's also bought with her husband Port Vale Football Club, because she realised when they moved their head office from Synetics next door to Port Vale in Burslem, which is part of Stoke, she realised the social need to have the football club and what the football club did for the local community, and that it was a thing of bringing the local community together, and it was in a bad place. So her and her husband bought it, and she has turned around what you would expect an owner of a football club to be like. So Port Vale were the first to say that when COVID happened, they were the first to say, despite they were potentially in the playoff situation, that they would no longer run matches because of the health and safety for their own supporters. She's got such a caring She runs charities and the like as well. Such a caring responsibility. And she's just shown a different way of leading a male-dominated group. And she looks like your typical grandmother.
Really?
And she is a grandmother. She won't mind me saying that. But she's got so much about her. And the other lady I would say, which is very similar but completely different sector, is Jacinda Ardern, the PM of New Zealand. I just love the way that she has redefined what a prime minister can do, regardless of her politics. And I don't really know what politics are actually, but just seeing how she expresses herself is amazing. So they're my two sort of role models. But I think Carol, because when I first met her, she was so unassuming and she really did look like a cuddly grandmother. And there's this amazing woman.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for giving us those. What attributes, like characteristics, Carol, for example, what are those attributes that she has that we can take away?
She sees a big picture. She has a concern for the local community, for individuals, members of staff. She is prepared to challenge the status quo and the norm, and she's prepared to make big decisions.
Amazing. Thank you. Big picture, big decisions. Yeah, care for the community. Those are some of the things that you can integrate into your life. So if you had to go back in time and meet your 15-year-old self, what key message would you share with her?
Oh, gosh. I think have confidence. Believe in yourself that your characteristics are still worthy in business. I don't think there was any confidence at all. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I was vaguely academic, but never the best. It's confidence and be prepared to, just because you're shy doesn't mean to say you're not going to get friendships.
Oh,
definitely. I know.
You should do with that. Oh, blessing. Confidence is key, really. Yes.
Yeah. And it comes from within. It comes from within, really.
From within, and what we think definitely of ourselves, definitely. So where do we see Jen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I could be retired, but I doubt I will be. But I would love to be a bit more semi. So not necessarily immediately now, but I'm looking at how do I redefine my work-life balance? Well, how much needs to be paid? How much can I do voluntary or supportive? So like more coaching and mentoring, more working in non-exec roles for charities and the like. That's not now, but 5 years, maybe 10 years down the line. So there's more opportunity to give back. But the next few years, up until 5 years' time, it is going to be mainly still doing what I'm doing. I would like to focus more on one sector, whether that be marketing or higher education. I don't know which way that's going to go yet. I mean, that's it. I want to keep on learning.
Definitely. Best wishes for that. Definitely. Do you have a life mantra?
My immediate response is not really, but I think one of the things that does drive me is I want to be the same June wherever I am. So this sounds a little bit morbid, but I've been to so many funerals of work colleagues, for example, where when you find out what they've done outside the workplace, you go, is this the same person? Is this the same person? And I want to be the same person wherever I am. So I'll give you an example. I mean, this is a really tiny example. Probably, unfortunately, any little baby that's born in my church probably gets a crochet blanket from me. That's about the length that I can go to. And I can't crochet much else, but I can do crochet blankets and scarves.
Oh, wow. That's
and nice. I thought, why am I not doing that for the babies that are born to my team? Why do I stop that giving that I have, whether that be buying somebody a bunch of flowers, buying people coffee or tea? Why do I stop, or just doing a thank you card? Why do I stop that outside of the workplace? Because I'm the same June. So I challenged myself in that, and that's a little thing. I'm sure there's been challenges the other way as well. But I suspect many people outside of the workplace do not know what I do, or have a rough idea but don't really get what I do. But I would like to think that people in the workplace know who the real June is as well, even though I might be their manager and sometimes have to give them bad news. That's my mantra, really. I want to be the same. At my funeral, that's really pessimistic, isn't it? I want everybody who's there to know, to recognise the same person. That to me is really important.
I think it is. It is definitely. That's a good one. Thank you. But in that, I also got something that I want to quickly ask you. Is there something about you, a positive or an interesting thing, that people are not aware of?
Oh my goodness. I don't know.
Do people know everything about you? Oh, is that?
That's one of my weaknesses, is that I do have my heart on my sleeve, and I do have to sometimes remember to reel it in, June. They don't need to know everything. I could be really flippant and say I helped make the world's longest daisy chain in 1977, but to be honest, that's my little Chris thing when we have that. So that's gone now.
But I think you've talked about caring, the fact that you create blankets for every child that is
You
born.
haven't seen what they look like, though.
I don't care. I don't care. It's the time that you create to give that. That's amazing. That's really amazing. With all that you do to create time to do that, I think it's...
it's funny. I started crocheting again when I was getting on trains to go down to London. And I thought sometimes my mindset is not one that I want to work, but I want to do something. So reading and crocheting, if you're doing little squares, you can do with somebody sitting next to you. I knew I needed a creative outlet because, again, that's something that can disappear when you're so busy. And yes, I love making cakes, but, I'm not great. But crocheting is something that I can do. But what people don't know about me, I really don't know. I can't think of anything. I'm sorry. We'll probably finish this and I'll have an idea and I'll have to ring you up and say, oh, it was such and such, but I can't think of anything.
Okay, so thank you. Any book you would recommend in decision making?
Well, I found that book that, as I said, Thinking Fast and Slow, heavy going but challenging. About we can't assume our brain automatically goes into proper decision making mode. And that was very challenging to me. And then another book that has been very challenging, and it's helped me in terms of the breadth of my decision making, so not decision making per se, is Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, because she looks at the way we have to consider the wider environment in our decision making. And
what was that?
It's called Donut Economics.
Oh, Donut Economics, yeah.
And it's by Kate, I can't say my R's properly, Raworth, Raworth. And that really challenged me about the decisions that we make, about how businesses operate if we want a sustainable business model. And so whilst it's not about decision making, it was about how do we operate in a way that is sustainable. And that needs to be in every decision making that we're doing at business, at a higher level business element.
I think so. That's really important. Thank you. So if you have to leave one challenge for women reading your story, listening to you, to help them become courageous in their decision making, what challenge would you leave them?
Well, the challenge would be involve other people, I think. To me, the challenge for all business women and business people is be yourself, not somebody else. So like in my case, if you love to gift, keep on gifting. But in terms of decision making as well, sometimes I think it's what's stopping you. So we talked about that childcare thing, about we create a list of why we can't do things. Mm-hmm. We should list those and then start taking each of those bullet points apart and doing something about them, because often we're the person who stops us from doing things most of the time. And we stop too soon. We knock on a few doors, get knocked back, and then that's it. We go, well, it wasn't for me. But if your heart's really there and that's what you want to do, you've got to keep on doing it and just list what's stopping you and start to knock it off. So for me, not having a doctorate, I must have been one of the very few deans in the country that isn't a professor or a doctor. Mm-hmm. So not having a doctorate was stopping me from doing anything else. The chances of me if I wanted to get another deanship anywhere else were probably limited. So I got my doctorate. Now that took a long time. It was probably the longest doctorate in the world in timescales, I'm sure.
How long did it take you?
Well, started doing a PhD. My supervisor's retired. Then I moved on to a DBA. That was all for 3 months, and I changed jobs. And then I had to do a Doctor of Education, all on the same topics. So I've had experience of PhD, DBA, and Doctor of Education, but I kept on going. It was slow, but I kept on going, and I think that that now gives me that some academic credibility. If I was looking to work with universities, when I work with universities and other institutions, I'm not just Mrs. And I never mind being called Mrs. That's not a problem, except for when I'm in an academic circle and everybody else is being called doctor. And then they go, Mrs. And that immediately goes, you haven't got a doctorate. So, hey ho. That's a funny way to make, isn't it? But yeah, stop being somebody else, be yourself, and just look at what's stopping you and slowly pull those things apart and do something about them.
I think that's great advice. I think it is great advice for me, and I'm sure for all our subscribers, to remember that just be yourself and remember to pull apart all those created boundaries and limitations that you have actually most likely made up, or if they're there, you can have actually their solutions for them. And we just have to look at them and make decisions. If you have to carry the car seat from the car, take the baby in, you have to do that to get into that position. So there you are.
Yeah, I think just finishing off there, I was actually in a very privileged position because, as I said right at the beginning, both my parents were nurses. To be a nurse in the 1960s, to be a male nurse in the 1960s, 70s, even the 80s was very unusual. So I saw the dynamic, we talk about women moving forward. I saw the dynamic of how it is when a man enters the women's world, in a way, and creates a career through that. So in a way, ironically, my father was a motivation for me to be able to do things differently in a different environment because he'd done it. And, 1 in 100 nurses, if that, were men. And it was, you do get some abuse and some questions about that. That helped me understand what women go through on a regular basis. So look for role models.
Yeah, look for role models. That's great. Thank you very much. So I hope you have all been able to tap into the amazing stellar woman, June Dennett, who has shared so much. She's given us so much. There's a lot for you to learn. Definitely, I have learned a lot. I've just been into an executive MBA, whatever it is that I've just had an opportunity to be in. I've been able to also be on the board of CIM board for a minute there. So I tapped into all these avenues, and I'm sure you two are going to tap into them. So June is an amazing leading specialist in the collaborative academic partnerships and higher education consultant, a chair of CIM board, marketing nerd, a mentor, a trainer, a mom, a wife. She's everything. And therefore, you're going to learn a lot. So thank you so much for your time. It has been amazing to have you here on the Stellar Woman Show and the Stellar Woman Magazine. We are still here to bring you those thriving women's stories, knowledge, and experiences so that you too can tap into them, shake up your perspective, see new possibilities, and make a change and thrive in your life. We are here to bring you light. We bring it in form of knowledge to empower you. You don't allow yourself to stay in a particular position because you think you can't move. You can see from someone's story, see yourself through it, make your own, craft your own dimension, and rise up and soar to whatever heights that you want to go to. So it's been amazing. It's been a great time to have you here. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for joining us on the Stellar Woman Magazine and Show's mission to spread thriving women's stories, knowledge, and experiences so that you too can learn 1 or 2 things, be inspired, empowered to change, and thrive. We change one woman at a time. This, we believe, will help to make the world a better and brighter world. I hope today's episode inspired you to change perspective, see new possibilities, and take action so that you can become the stellar woman that you would like to be. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go to the Stellar Woman Show and Magazine website for transcripts and more. Also, please remember to subscribe, review, and share with others, and follow us on all social media platforms. Have a great day. We look forward to catching up with you on the next episode.